Hello, everyone, and good morning. We're back with another stream today. Thanks for everyone for joining. My name is Jay. I'm the DevRel specialist for ChainSafe Gaming. For anyone who's not familiar with ChainSafe, we're a research and development firm focused on blockchain protocols. We help launch blockchains, we contribute to smart contract standards, and we manage some developer tools. We're back with our regular stream where we talk with different CEOs about things that they're innovating on that are interesting to the Web3 gaming community. Today, we'll be speaking with Linda Yuang, who is the CEO of Moddio and indie.fun. If you've been watching the craze of new token launches and gaming's coming to life, then you would definitely want to watch indie.fun. So with that said, I'd love to bring Linda on the stage. Hello.
Hello. Nice to see you, Jay.
Yep, always great to see you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Thank you.
Nice. There's been some exciting movement on Moddio. I've been watching since the platform went live, and you've been talking about indie.fun. But before we get into all of the juicy stuff, let's talk about your experience with Moddio. So can you share the vision behind Moddio? What problem are you solving, and why should people check it out?
Yeah, definitely. So, Moddio, we are a game launchpad. We try to make it as easy as possible for people to launch games, as well as everything that comes with making a game, whether that's making the game itself, again, launching it, publishing it, having it reach its audiences, and then, getting players thereafter. So, our vision really is to try to make it so anyone can make their own games, their own visions come to life.
Yeah, and it's definitely seems like you're kind of packaging that well for people. I know when you told me the idea, we met at like a gaming conference, and you were like, you could spring a multiplayer game up in like 5 minutes. I'm like, no way. And then you showed me a demo of exactly that, and it was mind blowing. So let's get into that game engine.
Yeah. And so for Moddio, there's a couple things. Number one is we are focused on browser games, so HTML5 games. And the reason for that is, people use all different types of computers. They use tablets, they use phones. Some people use Chromebooks, right? And so you can't always play the most triple A, heavy style games. And so we wanted to focus on browser games where anyone can access the game on any device, whether it's, those or it's Telegram or whatever it might be. So number one is we do focus on browser, and that also means our game engine is also usable in browser. So you don't need to download, you don't need to install. So it's also, that same idea of accessibility is made for everyone. So that's number one. Number two, as you mentioned, we do focus on multiplayer games, specifically massive multiplayer games, like 50 plus players per server instance. And for any game dev out there, those are difficult to make, right? If you're in a single indie game dev, it could take you months, if not even longer, just to build the backend infrastructure to build those types of games, let alone actually building the game itself. So that's why we wanted to focus on these types of games, which are made for social, made for inviting your friends, playing with other people, communities. And that's really the types of games that we want to focus on, those sort of multiplayer browser games.
You're definitely filling a good need because when I learned about game development in engines, I started off with Unity, and it was super complex, having to coordinate with artists, figuring out how to just scale things, work within their systems, and then going on to multi player networking. I tried maybe 2 or 3 times, and it just became overwhelming really quick, and I just put it down. I know there's someone on our team who worked on a tutorial for like Photon, and it's like a 4-hour long tutorial. So it's great to be able to visit the website, click around, and get started right away.
Yeah, definitely. And, those are a couple other things which, we don't talk about as much, but they are like features that people enjoyed. So one thing is we have live development. So I can actually work on a game at the same time as someone else. So if I'm working in a team, instead of needing to like build something, then get it uploaded and everything, and then having someone else work on it, we can actually work together. So like Google Docs versus Microsoft Word is the best analogy to use. So that's one piece, that live development, which some devs do take advantage of. So we have a lot of different like features. Oh, and then also our engine is, call it low code, no code, low code. So you don't need to actually type out the code. You can click, you can drag. So again, just that idea of how can we make this as simple as possible for people who are not just getting started, but also folks who maybe have already built a game and just want to prototype quickly.
Yeah, so that's a great feature that you mentioned that I haven't really considered because I've been focused on the building, on the multi-player networking stuff. But being able to collaborate with people, right? Like I was at a game jam this weekend. It was a global game jam. I'm sure there was tons of you who are watching that were participating. And we were building our game, we're building our scenes, but we all have our own individual scenes within Unity. And
Yeah.
then the last hour, we're scrambling to like trying to combine everyone's work, running into bugs, and like we just left out so many features just because of that coordinating, collaborating piece was so difficult.
Yeah, yeah, it's something which, like, we don't really talk about because, I mean, we do talk about, but, we don't really emphasize because, many people think it's like an advanced feature. But, like, for example, if you're working with artists, right, just this idea of like, "Hey, upload this art while I'm, like, coding the game, and now I don't need to wait." You don't need to wait until I'm done before you work on the next piece of art. We do this all the time as a team when we're building a game. We're gonna have the artist just, like, changing the world, changing the map while we're actually just editing it and adding colliders and all of those things, and it just makes that entire process easier. And so part of that too on our side is how can we also make it so that those changes do show up live and you don't need to constantly like republish or whatever it might be. That's just part of the user experience that we think about a lot when we try to improve our game engine.
I love it because that's one of those user experiences that you don't realize how powerful it
Yeah.
is until you don't have it. And you're like, oh my God, the normal way is just so much more terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Now you touched on a couple of features, but one thing I want to focus on is this multiplayer thing because I said I had tons of struggles in the past, and it's a huge challenge for any devs. And speaking to devs, like all the people I met this weekend at the game jam, they're like, "Let's do a multiplayer game." And I'm like, "No, guys, no, this is a nightmare." So can we talk about how does Moddio handle this to make game creation more seamless? How can you help players actually deploy this, and what does this look like in practice?
Yeah, definitely. So we essentially handle everything you need for a multiplayer game so that on your side, you can just, what we say is as a dev, all you have to worry about is the game design. You don't need to worry about, servers. Where am I hosting them? What about lag compensation? What about netcode, right? You don't need to worry about any of that. Also, we take care of like client side prediction versus server side prediction. And you can actually go through certain areas and decide if you want it to be client side or if you want it to be server side so that it just is a much more seamless experience for the player. So, if you're building a first person shooter, you're going to want to have different things than, say a card game, right? Where, having that real time, experience isn't as important. So essentially on our side, we just say, hey, we're going to take care of all of that. And on your side, you can just go in and start coding the game, making maps or whatever it might be, or coding the actual game itself. We also take care of chat, right? So, hey, you don't need to worry about building all of that yourself. We take care of moderation. Inside of our moderation, we also have roles. So you can say, hey, I want this person to be a contributor. And so they can actually edit the code. I want this person to just be a moderator. So all they can do is ban and kick people and mute people. I want this person, whatever it might be. We actually have it kind of like Discord. We can choose for each role what permissions they have access to. And so then that way you can say, hey, I can have, community people helping me to build this game. And then, what does that look like for that end product? Those are just some of the things. I mean, I could list all the features. We also have this really cool feature where you can actually have a world map, a world game. So you can essentially build the building blocks for the game, and then you can bring in people to build maps within the game. And so we call this community built worlds. So I don't have to build all the content as the main developer, but actually my community can actually expand the world for me and essentially like think about building an MMORPG with a community of people versus by myself. So a little bit off topic, but we have a bunch of different features which just try to make it really fun to make multiplayer games. And really focusing on that segment allows us to build these features that maybe other game engines don't pay as much attention to.
Yeah, so there's a lot of cool pieces there. I think the fact that you can kind of decide where things render, I think that's super useful considering all the different types of devices you now have access to that since you're building a web-based browser game. So that's super seamless. I love that it's kind of constructed in modules so that you can pick and choose the things that you want to bring to the game. It's definitely a great approach. It's new. I definitely want to poke around with that a bit more. I feel like every time I speak to you, there's maybe a 4 or 5 new things that you introduce, and I'm like, there's already so much here to consume. It's like absolutely insane how fast you're producing stuff.
Yeah, yeah. We have a lot of features which we're updating in our documentation to really, talk about all the things that we have. Like I've only even touched the tip of the iceberg here. There's a lot of things our devs have figured out, or we just listen to what they want and we expand upon it. So yeah, definitely check out our documentation. We're gonna have some more stuff about what we built.
Yeah, and that's 100% true about kind of taking the feedback, iterating. I've seen that happen live on Twitter already, where you're kind of making adjustments based on community feedback. So it's awesome to hear that. And now you have a platform running. You're going into new spaces, but can you share like people who've used your tools, what their success stories are, maybe some games for people to check out that are super successful on your platform?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So one game, our most popular game is actually called Brains, Brains.io. It's gone viral before. It's like a zombie tag game that uses physics. So it's a little bit different, but definitely tell people do try it out. Another game that's very popular is called Karma Slayers. It's actually an MMORPG built by one of the developers on our platform. He has spent, gosh, hundreds of hours, if not more, building this out and like building out the content. There's a super avid community that loves it, and so it just really shows that even individuals, like a single person, can build an MMORPG, which is crazy when you think about how much money has been spent on building MMOs. Um, we've had several games that have gone viral in the past. There's people who have learned how to code using Moddio because you get to build a game that you play with your friends. So definitely things like that. And then of course with indie.fun and everything we're doing on the fundraising side, we really want to see that next step of not just have they built a game, but they can actually fundraise for it, get revenue from it, and make this into a living. Like that's the ultimate goal, I think, ultimate dream of any indie game dev. So really, really hoping to see a lot of folks do that. And we've already had some successful fundraisers. So we'll see what happens.
That's awesome. You're definitely paving the infrastructure, the road for people to get to there, for them to start off as an indie developer, get all the tools they need, and then move on to this next step. And let's get into that next step, which is indie.fun, right? You built the game. It was super quick to launch, but maybe I don't have a huge team. Maybe I need some funds in order to get to that next step.
Yeah.
So introduce the world to indie.fun for those who haven't heard about it. What's the main objective behind launching it?
Yeah, definitely. So we officially launched it, gosh, not even 2 weeks ago. And then we kind of closed the floodgates for a little bit as we wanted to build out some new features. And actually, just last night, we reopened it. So now anyone can come and anyone can submit a game. So please do check it out. But the way that Indie.fun works is we allow people to fundraise for their game while launching a token with it. So we call it the pump.fun for games. But essentially you could say, hey, if I'm an indie game dev, I have this prototype or this playable demo that people can check out. And I can say, hey, I want to fundraise, 200 Solana off of this game. And then based on that, people can back that game. And then we help to create a liquidity pool. When that fundraise is successful, the funds are released to the game developer, and we release that liquidity pool so that anyone can trade the token. So that's kind of like the nitty gritty of how it works. But in terms of higher level, the reason why we built this, right? I think Bryson actually tweeted about this, which is awesome. But for game developers, like $10,000, $20,000 can be a life changing amount of money. Like that can be, most game developers never see that kind of cash, right? So it doesn't take a lot to kickstart this type of thing, right? It doesn't take a lot of money to kickstart people's indie game development journey. So, when we saw that, and we ourselves then launched a token called Bounty, and we saw how much demand was behind gaming and meme coins, we just thought, wow, this opportunity for game devs that have never seen this kind of cash. What could we do for them? So essentially, we wanted to build a platform which allows people to fundraise for their game using a token, which can also be used as that in-game currency. So it already immediately has utility. And on the creator side, why that's interesting is, you can build a game on Roblox, or you can build a game on Sandbox, or whatever it might be, right? But you have to use their currency. You have to use Robux. And so, do you truly own your game if you're using someone else's currency? Like, not really. You're kind of under whatever direction they decide to go. And so, by owning your own currency, you can say that you truly have ownership of your game. If you wanted to leave Moddio, go leave Moddio. If you wanted to expand your game, expand your game. If you want to have a series of games, you can have a single token that works across all of these different games. So that's a really powerful tool for creators in order to, not just launch a game, but be able to truly own it and expand it and do all those things that they want to do with it. So kind of a long-winded answer, but I think there's a lot of thought behind what would make game developers be able to be successful. And we kind of looked at it from that lens of, we've helped them to make a game. Now, how can we help them to like become an actual indie game dev?
I love it how you're like kind of putting these like steps in place for people to be able to empower themselves to take their idea to actually fundraise. And there's a lot of controversy going around behind people like launching their own tokens. And I kind of want to get into that a bit to hear your opinion on this, because indie.fun is up. Pump.fun is kind of what people are familiar with people like springing up their own tokens, fundraising. But then we've had some instances where maybe people are using weird tactics to promote their tokens, or maybe they're straight outright rugging people, right? So how does like indie.fun compare to something like pump.fun? How are you like mitigating those kind of issues?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a couple things, right? Number one is we do focus on this idea of, when you go on indie.fun, for anyone who wants to check it out, you can actually play the game before you decide to back it. And that was really important for us, because we want to have people who are actually like believe in their projects enough to build it and show it off to actually be able to fundraise. So, we say you can actually play the demo, build something that's, actually, not just screenshots or videos, and then decide, hey, do I actually like this project? Do I want to back it? So that's number one. And I think that goes a long way towards, being able to research. And then we also allow things like, you can check out the creator. If they have a Moddio profile, you can actually see all the other games they created. When did they join? Are they other collaborators on other types of games, right? So you can see that history, as well as, how many people have played the game, and other data. That gives you a little bit more of an understanding of who is this creator and what is this game. The other piece that I want to hit on that makes us quite different than on Pump.fun is, we allow for, for Pump.fun, when you launch a token, that token's kind of out in the world. It's just community owned. And we do believe in that 100% fair launch. That's very important to us. However, for us, when a developer creates a fundraise on indie.fun, they actually get the funds themselves to their wallet. And that's important because, as a developer, again, we want these developers to actually have cash to build their game, right? This isn't just like hey, Moddio is taking all the money, or Radium's taking all the money, and the investors or whoever it might be. It is that kind of Kickstarter, right? You actually get the funds. And so we want the developers to feel supported in terms of actually building the game. And so they can just worry about, how can I make this game better? How can I make, this world better? How can I get more of my community to join? And I don't have this like looming overhead of, am I going to run out of cash tomorrow? Or I don't have the cash to hire artists. I don't have the cash to hire developers. The idea is, if you back a game, you want that game to actually be successful. And this fundraiser is going to kickstart your ability to do so. So that's also something that's really important for us, and different from Pump.fun.
Yeah, I think that's a major difference. And when I first heard of your idea, I was kind of a bit concerned because of these things that I'm mentioning. But I think you have a lot of security measures in place. The fact that I can vet the team, I can see maybe they've launched a successful game already on the platform, so they know what they're doing. I know that they can actually pull this off. Being able to test the product before I even put money into this, that is completely different from like everything else that's in this industry, if we're being pretty honest. So that's a nice change of pace.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to get to is that we're addressing the fundraising, and you're saying, there may be a chance where they don't have money for artists or to hire maybe external parties to actually fund their dream. But what this technology is enabling almost is more people to collaborate. So I'm actually thinking, like, how do you envision indie.fun fostering communities and around game ideas and developers? Maybe not necessarily only contributing funds, but maybe contributing some work. Maybe I want to add some art to that game. I think it needs to be like spruced up a bit, right? How does that work?
Yeah, definitely. So that is definitely true. But actually, if I can back up a moment, I actually think the most powerful tool of a token is actually building community around it, right? Once you've essentially backed a token, you are part of these folks who follow whether it's pump.fun or some other coin. You're part of these folks that then follow this developer and say like, hey, I believe in whatever it is you're telling me you're going to do, and I'm going to believe it until I don't, and then I back out, right? So it is like a true tool to gather really, really avid followers, as well as really, really strong communities. And that's really why we wanted to have a token be part of this, because it's such a strong community building tool, along with this idea of like, hey, you can use it in the game and it is like a currency and all these things. But as a marketing tool, it's very, very powerful. And then you have these people who have these tokens now, and now they're really bought into your ecosystem. And when you talk about how do you add to it and all these things, now a token can really help to not only figure out, who are these folks who are called true believers, as well as like who are these folks who hold a lot of the coin, and how can I get them involved in what I'm doing. So I think that those are all things that a token unlocks, as well as obviously within the game, it's up to the creator what they want to do with that token. Whether they want to use it as a way to, acquire more players, whether they want to use it as just a competition, it's completely up to them what they do with that token. We leave that freedom up to them. We just give them the tools to do it. So I think as a developer, especially for Web2 devs who've never had these tools before, like they're really starting to learn like, wow, there's all these cool things I can do with this that I couldn't really do in Web 2. And so it's a learning process, but we've seen a lot of Web 2 game devs actually embracing this idea, which has been really exciting for us.
Wow, yeah, that's pretty awesome to hear. There's a lot of cool features to bring people together. I 100% agree with the idea that tokens are what bring communities together. And it's interesting the way you framed it as kind of marketing, because what people are doing essentially through this platform is not only saying you have my vote of confidence within your product, but I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I believe in this so much, I'm going to invest in you, and let's go along for this journey. And that's an interesting experience that I think most game developers don't really have with their audience that this offers to them.
Yeah. And think of it as like your backers are your super supporters, right? They're going to go out and they're going to be that marketing horn to really amplify your message, because they hold your token. They're going to want other people to come to this game. So it's just this like, really, really strong marketing tool outside of just, fundraising.
Now that you say that, I'm really curious about what type of events that spring up that are community driven because someone is a whale or they're a token holder and they're like, hey, we have this currency. Maybe you can use it for tournaments. So I have to create these tournaments. I have to get people to like enter these tournaments, right? To build this community alongside the game developer.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, one of the games that fundraised on indie.fun, Squid Games, they had a backer who actually, grabbed a bunch of the coins and then decided that he wanted to give out the coins to, his backers or his supporters, whatever you want to call it, as well. So we're actually already seeing things like that pop up where, people fundraise for a game and maybe their supporters like, hey, I want to bring more people to this game for you. How can I help? Right. And so they go out on their own and figure out ways that they can like drum up support. So we're already seeing that even with just a couple game launches.
That's pretty awesome. I'm super curious. I would love to see some maybe like case studies or something around like guerrilla marketing campaigns that were developed by a community for a game that they're like trying to fundraise for,
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure we'll see those popping up soon.
So now, of course, this is a Web3 gaming stream. So let's talk about how does Web3 technology enhance what you're doing on Moddio and indie.fun. You already mentioned some tokens, but if there's any other features that we maybe haven't touched on, let's talk about how Web3 technology influences all of this.
Yeah, definitely. So, definitely talking about tokens and all these things. And as I mentioned, we talked to a lot of Web2 game devs, and like Web2 game devs, when obviously when you talk to them about tokens, they're just like, I'm gonna stay the heck away, right? Like I don't like Web3 and all these things. But what's interesting is, when I tell them about tokens, their first comeback is always, well, I can do that in Web2. It's like, yeah, sure, you definitely could. I'm not saying you can't build your own currency. You definitely could. And you could even sell it outside of your platform. You definitely could. However, think about all those things you would have to build just to do that. You would have to have some sort of authentication. You'd probably have to make sure that there's some sort of payment. And again, I'm not saying that it's impossible to build. It definitely is possible to build. But now think about all the time you just spent building your game. And now you have to build all of these features on top just to keep track of all the payments and who owns what and where's that currency and how does that play into my game. And I need to make sure my currency has a fixed supply and all these things, and that just takes away from time of building your game versus, hey, I can just use this Web3 technology. I can instantly launch a token and instantly have this community of avid followers, which is also very difficult to find in Web2, like people who are just going to talk about the game to everyone they know, and have them, like have all these features. Like, yeah, you can do it, but it's going to be hard and it's going to take away time and it's going to be more cost when you could just say, hey, I can instantly do it, take care of all of that, have a token, have a, this supporting community, and be able to just build my game off of that because I've essentially fundraised money. Like, I just can't imagine someone going to Web2 and being like, hey, buy my Robux. I promise you I'm going to give you a game. Just buy my Robux now. Like, no one would back that, right? But in Web3, that's something which people are used to. That's something they understand. So that audience, I know it's not technology, but that audience that comes with that technology is also something which is, I think, overlooked. And so we've gotten, again, some Web2 devs who, even though they are not native Web3, and if you talk to them about anything else, they would have been skeptical. They've been very welcoming about our platform because, we don't talk about, or they don't need to worry necessarily about like what are all these Web3 features and terms and whatever. For them, the sell is clear, right? I can fundraise for my game, and then I can continue building it. That's a very clear message. So I think that Web3 technology really helps to make that easier. And once you explain that to them and they understand it, they're open to that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think a lot of people, even people who are within Web3 space, if you try to develop something 2 or 3 years ago, the landscape is drastically different today than what it was then. Even with things like wallets, we now have passkeys, we have social logins that are springing up that you don't even need to code most of them. You copy like a code snippet, you change your API key, you have a wallet now. Now you can integrate, all these tokens and things. And I don't think a lot of people do realize how seamless it is now.
Yeah. It can, I think making it as easy as possible for folks to get started. I mean, that's always been why I think Web3 tech has been hard for people to, get into. But obviously with all these companies popping up, making it easier and easier, it just is easier to blur the lines between Web2 and Web3, and makes it easier to convince, game devs and other developers to come into the ecosystem.
Yeah, 100%. And I think another point that you highlighted that is overlooked is the whole community, the culture that is here, right? Because if you really think about it, in 2021, people were buying NFTs, which were just images. People were making fun of them, but they understood that NFT could be part of an IP that's much bigger than it. It could be part of game mechanics that's much bigger than it. So you have a culture that is willing to contribute to just a small idea, which may be concept art for your game, or maybe just a quick demo of your game. And you have already people embedded in that culture that are used to giving up money for a future kind of game that they're looking for, a product or service. So I completely agree on the culture part.
Yeah, definitely. The real builders survived through 2022 until now, and now we're starting to see those companies popping up, which is really exciting.
Nice. Now, okay, you've spoken about a platform where people can like press clicks, grab some modules, deploy, and then they're deployed. Now they can fundraise and do that fairly easily. And then I read this thing the other day that you've been working on some AI agents that people can directly deploy within their video games. I was just like, how? First of all, I don't know how it's possible. I've seen it happen within a couple of weeks, but like, what is going on here? How do AI agents like integrate with the system that you've already built, and what are they bringing to game development?
Yeah, definitely. So, high level, I talked about Moddio having three different pillars, right? Our first one is our game engine, Moddio. Our second one is our fundraising platform, indie.fun. And then our third is actually a platform called fullmetal.ai, which is a little known platform that we've launched, but it is our AI platform. And with Full Metal, we allow users to deploy swarms of independent AI agents into games instantly. And these AI agents have their own wallets. They can make decisions with those wallets. They can play in games. They can compete. All of the things that you would expect a player to do within a game with AI agents. And again, we can do that instantly. Any indie.fun game is already automatically integrated. All you have to do is click a couple buttons and you can just have those AI agents within the game. And we actually have a couple different demos on our Twitter, Pow Pow Fun, which is our bounty token Twitter, where we actually show demos of this, and we're continuing to do that. So we recently, as you mentioned, we recently announced that we're partnering with NRN, who made AI Arena, which is a fantastic game that uses AI agents that are trained on human behavior to actually play the game. So instead of having just like AI that like runs around, not very smart, you can actually train it on actual human behavior so that it actually moves and acts, it shoots, picks up items, all the things that you would expect a human to do to win the game, that NRN agent will do. And those are now all fully integrated into Full Metal in order to do this. So high level Full Metal, what it is an AI platform. We have not just like behavior, but we also have the ability to have LLMs. So we actually just announced, I think yesterday, that we actually have integrated DeepSeek as well. Eliza is also integrated. And so when you are a player, you can actually go in and talk to NPCs or other users who you don't know. And the idea is you want them to talk like other players as well. So essentially, we have now built players within games because they not only have behavior, they also have language. And all of this is to emulate human behavior as much as possible. So that's kind of what we're trying to do with Full Metal, like essentially allowing people to you can essentially deploy swarms of people into games. So why do we do this? The reason why is because we're focused on multiplayer games. One of the biggest issues with multiplayer games is something called player liquidity. If I enter into an MMORPG and there's no other players within the game, I'm not going to stay. Single player games don't have this issue, but multiplayer games do. And so by adding AI agents, we can now ensure that every single game has players, whether it just launched yesterday, or it's like an MMORPG that already has millions of players. So think about entering a game where you can play with, there's always going to be other players there for you to play against, compete against, talk to. And you as a player don't even know if they're actually a player or if they're an AI agent. That's really the type of world that we want to get to because it makes games more fun. I never need to worry if other people are going to play this game, how popular it is. Like if it's, all these games, it's like rise and fall because players join, then they leave. And you're like, oh, I love this game, but I can't play because no one plays it anymore. Well, now with AI agents, there can always be other people to play against. So that's really what we want to build with Full Metal AI. And on top of that, when we think about degens, right, with degens, we found that there's a disparity between degens and gamers, right? Sometimes what they want isn't the same. And so that's one of the issues that Web3 gaming has faced. Now we can actually make degens now play games because they can deploy AI agents. They don't actually have to play the game themselves. And so now you can think of it as degens are actually adding to the entertainment of this game instead of subtracting from it because all they're doing is, trying to win money. So that's all of when we think about what would make games better for not just creators, but also gamers, it's building this entire ecosystem of always ensuring that there's other players, making sure that those players actually want to win the game. They're not just there to troll. And they could if they want, but it all adds to that experience of a player of what makes this game great. So that's really what we want to build with Full Metal AI.
It's like I have so many thoughts running through my head. It's absolutely mind-blowing. First, I want to highlight that you made another announcement yesterday just to show like your production is like absolutely insane. And you already have support for DeepSeek, which people started speaking about yesterday, which again is insane. So awesome accomplishment there. Incredible.
Yes.
Now, when you're speaking about
Yeah.
when you're speaking about AI agents, right? I played with a bunch. I know a bunch of people who have deployed their own, and it's like, all right, we have this Twitter bot. They're saying random stuff every like 5 seconds. Kind of cool. What is the point? And here, I love the approach you're taking overall, because you're figuring out what are all the issues within the game development process specifically for multiplayer web-based games. And yeah, you're right. That's a huge problem. Like even the major studios like Marvel Rivals, I was playing over the weekend and stuff, and my friend was like, "Hey, that game loaded too quick. This is a game of bots." And he's
Yeah.
able to tell because of their movements, the way they're playing and stuff.
Yeah.
And Bryson actually brought this up because you mentioned him earlier. We were on a Twitter space, and he said, what I'd love to see is NPCs that have faults,
Yes.
because we're used to seeing NPCs that have aimbot, right? That as soon as I go on the map, he's sniping me, I'm dead, I have no opportunity. But what if it picked up on like common faults that players have? Maybe a lot of people don't realize you can climb to this, higher place to get a more strategic advantage, so everyone stays at the bottom, and the bot's doing the same thing because it plays like a typical player.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's something which NRN has done a great job building. They've built this platform where, because it learns from actual players, number one is like it makes it easier in a sense to train AI agents, because all these different games, all of them have different goals. Even if you just slightly change one little thing of a game for an AI agent, that could change the entire game itself, right? And so, because it learns from actual players, you have a wider experience of what these AI agents can do. And then number two, what you said is, if a player does something consistently, these AI agents are going to learn what that thing is, and they don't know what's right or wrong. They don't know if it's going to make the game better or worse. All they know is that this player is doing this, so therefore I will do this as well. So there's definitely things that we are like talking to about with NRN in terms of fun things that we can do with, whether it's flaws or whatever it might be, that makes these games more interesting. But on the language side, I actually want to talk a little bit about what you just said about flaws and opinions. One of the things that we have built into Full Metal, as well as because we're using these like these systems like Eliza, is these NPCs have opinions, they have personalities, they have traits, they remember lore. So when I think about MMORPGs, which are one of my favorite genres ever, it's think about it where you could actually build it where these AI agents are essentially NPCs in the world. You go to them and they're going to have their own story, and you don't need to like worry about a developer who, like for Baldur's Gate, right, spent so much money building out this entire backstory, and every single cutscene is different, every single thing that you type is different. Now an LLM can take care of all of that and actually respond to what you say, remember what you said, respond to what you said, and like have a different personality than the guy right next to him. And so it just makes that entire game world much more vibrant. When you talk about Twitter bots, like I agree, like right now LMs are kind of just chatbots, and seeing them in a game, that's such a more immersive experience, to being able to talk to them, seeing them walk around, being able to walk like a human, and then being able to talk with them. That's a whole different world that we're really excited about.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited about it too. I was pretty mind blown. I played a few different games where the LLM or the AI bot is kind of a central point of the game.
Yeah.
And it was kind of confusing because at first I entered the game and I'm like, all right, what can this thing say? And then after an hour, I'm like having full blown conversations, trying to manipulate this player to rat on this other player, or like give me more information that they're holding out on. And it's like a fascinating experience once you get involved.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, there's only so many things that, you or I could come up with. And that's why we say, hey, if we can give these tools to as many people as possible, just think about what could happen. That the power of the crowd is really, really cool to think about what could come out of this.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you mentioned a couple of applications, and there was one that was kind of a bit concerning to me, which is the DGen. And putting on kind of my DGen hat, I'm always concerned whenever I talk about cryptocurrencies within a video game and then attracting DGens, because then I have some sort of incentive to manipulate this token, right? And that changes the game experience and stuff like that. So this is going to have profound implications for the game experience, the user experience, what the game looks like, and what people do with it. So what kind of game experiences are best suited for AI agents? Which ones do you want to like stay away from maybe? And what advice do you have for developers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, right? I don't think that there's necessarily a category which I say like, "Hey, we shouldn't do this," or "Hey, we should do that." I think that, really it should be up to the creators. Like they have a vision for what they want the game to be, and that's why for us we say, we're kind of a pure UGC platform. Like, hey, we're not going to tell you guys what to do. We're just going to give you the tools to do it, and then you go out and do something amazing, right? And there might be some games where you're like, nope, absolutely not. No AI agents. I don't want to see them. Period. And that's up to the creator. And then there might be others who say, hey, I welcome them. Like, come play my game. And players, you can't tell the difference, so who cares, and we really want to leave that up to creators to figure out what they want to do with the game. I think for us to just say like blanket statement, like, oh, for example, like I'm making this up, like FPSs should never have AI agents. Maybe there's a fun experience there that someone has figured out, or Among Us, right? Like, hey, that might be really really fun with AI agents. Figure out who the AI is, or something like that. So like I in general as a company we try to stay away from how can we like constrain creativity, and instead we say, hey, here are all the tools, let's see what you guys can come up with. And that's generally been our motto whenever we build things.
I love the motto. I definitely think that's the way. You just want to make people aware of what can happen and then just say, have fun, experiment. I love the Among Us idea. I feel like that is a brilliant idea. We should definitely have games where like trying to figure out who's the real person, who's the bot in here.
Yeah, I think it'd be very fun.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. So now there's a lot that you're tackling at once. And for anyone who's an entrepreneur, they're building either their own game studio, they're trying to get something off the ground. What challenges do you foresee with Moddio and indie.fun as you scale, and how are you preparing for them?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that can happen when you scale. I've worked in dozens of other startups, and there's always things that problems that are coming, and then problems you don't know are coming, right? So in terms of us, right now we're just laser focused on how can we help game developers with have a platform for game developers that really addresses their needs. And there's so many things that they need, and we're just like, because we just launched the platform, we're just still figuring out like, okay, how can we help with curation? How can we help with discoverability? How can we help with just little things of, again, these Web2 game devs, they don't even know what Web3 is. So how can we teach them about Web3? And how can we improve our documentation? How can we improve our onboarding? So all of those are even just near-term things that we're thinking about. And then longer term, it's again just how can we get more game devs to build games? How can we get more game devs to fundraise for games? How can we get more game devs to bring their communities in? So yeah, there's there's so many things, and really for us, it's our most important thing is every single thing we do, we want to be laser focused on one single thing, do it well, and then we can always expand. So right now, we're just laser focused on how can we make indie.fun successful, and then we'll figure out kind of what we can do from there.
Awesome. You're definitely doing a great job. I see it's kind of unraveling. I've spoken to Web2 developers. I actually connected you with someone within the Web2 space,
Yeah.
explicitly works on Web2. He got back to me after talking to you. He's like, this is perfect. This is what I've been looking for. I've been scared of Web3. Now this is this is the thing.
Yeah, you have, and it's been an amazing connection. We've been talking to him quite a bit, helping him out. I don't want to give too much away because I haven't asked him permission to mention his name, but he's been super happy, I think, and we want to continue to help him and Web2 game developers like him.
Yeah, definitely excited to see where that goes. Now, you've been speaking a lot about indie development, helping people get started, all the tools that are available. What advice would you have to indie developers trying to break into Web3?
Yeah, I mean, man, the biggest thing that I tell game developers is, don't think about it as Web3 versus Web2, right? Think about it as, understand what Web3 is, understand what the technology is. I think it's just interesting that Web3 is one of the first industries I personally have worked in where you go out with, oh, I'm a Web3 game dev, versus like, if you talk about a game dev, you don't necessarily go out with like, oh, I only build on like Construct or Unity or Unreal, right? You say I'm a game dev first, and oh, the engine I use is this, right? Sometimes maybe not, but like generally speaking, I feel like you talk about being an indie game dev first. So I say all that because I think that focusing on the Web3 side of things isn't as important as just focusing on, hey, what are the features or the technology that I want to use in Web3 that helps me, whether it's a token or NFTs even, or, something else like the wallet and authentication, security. There's a bunch of different things that Web3 can help with. And then you can think about those features and say, okay, if I were to bring those into my game, how would those make my game better, right? So fundamentals. So when you think about it that way as an indie game dev, you can just instead think, all right, what is the game I want to build? And what are these features I want to add that make my game better or run smoother or bring in a more community? When you think about it that way, it's a lot easier to think about, like, how do I use these technologies? How do I use Web3 gaming? How do I talk to the community? Because you're speaking from a place of, how do I put it? Like your own wants and desires versus buzzwords, right? And I think that that's always going to be a stronger pitch, as well as just, you focus on the fundamentals versus, like, what are cool features to have. So not really advice, but kind of like, this is how I talk to game developers. Just think about your game first, and then think about how these features can help your game versus like thinking about the features and then trying to build a game out of them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The point isn't to use Web3 technology. It's to understand what is the added value here and in which situations can you apply this to your particular game.
Exactly. And you don't need every single one, right? Maybe it's some things, maybe you want a token, but you don't want NFTs. We see that all the time. Maybe you want, wallets to do this specific thing, and that's also okay. Maybe you want tokens to do a specific thing. Maybe it's like authentication versus like actually using within the game. It's totally fine. And there's a lot of creativity there. It's up to creators to really think through what would make their game better.
Yeah, that's another great point, because a lot of the people I've spoken to that are in the Web2 space that are kind of considering getting involved, they're like, I don't want to launch a token and do the NFTs and all this. And they assume it's a package deal. It's an all or nothing kind of thing. And I'm starting to realize that over the past year.
Yeah, definitely. And then also you think about it, that's also partly why Web2 game devs are scared to get in the space, because they think, oh, if I'm a Web3 game dev, I need to have XYZ features. And that isn't true, right? So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Now I have a awesome opportunity to speak to you. You're a visionary. You're building the future. So I'm curious, where do you think we're headed in the next 5 to 10 years? Just seeing where your vision's at.
Yeah. I mean, kind of going back to that same theme, I think that Web3, like, and Web2, having those different categorizations just doesn't make sense. I think it's all just going to become gaming. And I truly believe that. And all these things that I see, not just us building, but other people in the industry building, how gaming people talk about things, how Web3 gaming talks about things. I really just think it's just going to become game development. And I would love to say that, hey, fundraising is always going to be a core piece of game development. It doesn't matter for Web3 or Web2, and we want to be part of that process and being able to offer the idea of crowdfunding while having ownership of this game to backers. I think that's a really powerful draw. So yeah, for me, I really do think that it's going to just become gaming. And then I also would love to see, and I do think the industry's head this direction of, it people have thought about, I guess Web3 game is particularly guilty of this, but also Web2 game devs, where, hey, I need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars or invest hundreds of millions of dollars to make AAA games. Those are the only games that everyone wants to play. For some reason, this is just such a pervasive thought, and I don't know why. Because, for us, we focus on indie devs. We focus on people who are maybe just one person, two-person teams. When you think about gaming as a whole, Web2 gaming didn't start off with AAA games. It started off with Tetris, Mario, like these very simple games, but it got people interested and it hooked their attention. So for whatever reason, and I would love to blame investors for this, but it's across the industry. People just believe that you need to have a AAA game, and those are the only games everyone wants to play. And that isn't true. The casual games, small games, indie games, those are such a powerful tool of actually getting people to stick around because they can find games that they want to play that have fun game loops versus, EA said that I would like this game. So I think that indie game devs are going to have, I mean, they're already having a little bit of a renaissance right now, but I think they're going to continue to have this renaissance of building, fun, quirky games, casual games, things outside the box. And I'm really excited to be part of that and help that industry along. I would love to see it continue to grow.
Yeah, I think it's mostly just what people see, right? Like I see this AAA game on TV. I want to make video games. That's
Yeah.
kind of my point of reference. For me personally, I've had those conversations with, I don't know, hundreds of students over the past couple of years when I'm trying to teach Web3 game development, and everyone wants to build the next MMO. And I'm like, no, you want to build Flappy Bird. That's your target, is build Flappy Bird, something you can build on your own, maintain, and like actually deploy. So 100%
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're a starting game dev, shooting that high is going to lead to failure. Like 99% of the time, you're not going to build a fun game. No one's going to play. You're going to get discouraged and never build a game again. And so instead of, you start with something small and maybe you get an audience that follows you and starts following your dev logs or whatever it might be. And over time, if you want to get to that MMO, now it's not a huge step anymore. It's just like, hey, I already have people who follow me, and now I'm building more and more games and I'm getting excited, and now I can build a big game like that.
As you're saying that, I realize what I really love about indie.fun. And it's just the idea that, like, as a creative, as I talk to other students, everyone has this huge idea. And what you force people to do is to deliver an MVP. I have to deliver the idea and see, is this worth it? Do people like this? Can I build a community around this before I spend the next 2-3 years building this game and it failing eventually, anyways?
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things I find with game devs is they're very stuck on what they think people want. It's kind of like a startup, right? Like you have to find product market fit before you actually build something. Game dev, same thing. You have to find an idea, a game loop that sticks, and you can build a game around a game loop. Actually, you should build a game around a game loop versus having a game and then trying to figure out what the game loop is after. So yeah, that's kind of why we built Moddio the way we did. It's this idea of I can try out new game loops, try something new, it doesn't work, test it out, live update it, all these things that make it as fast as possible for iteration, figure out that game loop, and then now I can build a game around what I've figured out.
Love it, love it. The strategy, everything you're working on, it's all awesome. But now we're getting towards the end of the conversation. We probably have like 3 minutes left. So what is next for Moddio and indie.fun? Anything that you can share with us besides what you've already shared?
Yeah, definitely. We're doing a lot of really cool things on the AI side. So do keep your eyes peeled out. We obviously just announced our partnership with NRN. We're building a lot of really cool things with them that we're really excited to work on. Obviously, things that we're doing with Pow Pow Fun, which is with our token bounty. We're continuing to make updates there, continuing to build out that world, continuing to build out what we're doing with bounty. So definitely keep an eye out on all that. That's very vague, but we do talk about it on our Twitter. And also obviously what we're doing on Indie Fun is just we're continuing to allow people to fundraise. We have a lot of cool features we're working on. We just obviously put out some new features and then opened it up this morning for anyone to launch their own game. So do check that out. We are definitely looking to make a lot of improvements for that, as well as expanding what indie.fun can do. So again, very vague, but I think that there's a lot of exciting things. We launch very, very quickly. So every single day you look at our Twitters, we're going to be probably announcing something new. So yeah, keep an eye out.
That's not an exaggeration either. It's literally every day there's a new announcement of something that you can check out, something you can explore. So definitely follow the Twitter pages, keep up to date with the community to check up on the next things. Because even if you check today, you're going to have to check back tomorrow. There's always going to be something new.
Yeah. We try to launch quickly and listen to feedback as much as we can.
Yes, definitely. So do you have any last words for the audience, for anyone viewing before we go?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, hit on the big things here. But definitely, if you are a game dev, check out indie.fun. If you've never tried fundraising before, like this is kind of your opportunity. No matter if you're one person or a team, we've seen people who have reached out to us on all sides. Really, for us, we just want to help game devs to be able to build out their games. Like that's something which I think Web3 gaming has sorely needed, just good games. And I don't want to depend on companies to tell me what those good games are. I want to see people who are like me and you, just sitting down, building a game, launching it in like a day or two, just cool ideas. So yeah, check out indie.fun, check out what we're doing. And yeah, obviously, you can reach out to us on Twitter, Telegram, Discord, a bunch of different channels, and we'd love to hear your feedback.
Nice. Definitely provide some feedback. And there's just one other thing I wanted to mention, just because I saw this crawling on your pages. You have maybe some sort of upcoming event that people can
Oh,
participate in?
yes. Yes. Thank you for the reminder. We do have a game jam. We're hosting a game jam for the month of February. It starts February 1st. You don't have, you can submit a game by yourself. You can submit multiple games. You can submit games with teams. It's all up to you. It is $10,000 of prize pool. So we're really trying to go out with a bang here. We really want to see some interesting things. And by the way, even if you do not win, that doesn't mean you can't submit on indie.fun anyways, right? We want to get you awareness. We want to make sure that people see your game. Game Jam is one way to do it. And then you can always launch on indie.fun anyways. So yeah, come join our Game Jam. The link is on indie.fun at the very top. It is hosted on Itch. So please do come. It'll be about 3 weeks long. And we're working on potentially getting some judges who maybe have some names out there. We're still working on it, but yeah, definitely do come sign up and check it out.
All right, awesome. I definitely wanted to make sure we get that announcement out there because I know I've been pumped. I've been talking to colleagues about it. Like we should probably enter just to experiment with it, see where it's going.
Yeah. And oh yes, one other thing to add there: you do not need to use the Moddio game engine for this game jam. You can use any game engine. So if you're already used to Unreal Unity, feel free to use it.
Awesome. Well, I really want to thank you. It's been a pleasure ever since I met you, talking to you all the time about these random ideas within Web3, AI, all this cool stuff you're working on. So thank you. It was definitely a pleasure to have you on the stream.
Definitely. Glad to be here. Great chat.
Awesome. Well, I hope you have a great day and we'll kick into the wrap up.
Sounds good.
All right. I'll see you later, Linda.
See ya.
Well, there you heard it. If you haven't heard of indie.fun, definitely check out the platform. There's a lot of great opportunities for not only for you to create games, but for you to fundraise, for you to build a community around it. And now, even if you can't find your initial players, you can build AI agents directly into your game for your initial fan base to have something to engage with there. So they're working on a ton of cool things. I am personally a super fan. I'll be looking to enter into that game jam, and you should too. So I want to thank you for joining us with this stream today. My name is Jay Albert, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.